Hey everybody, welcome to Klaus to the Heart here on YouTube.com. I'm Jason Klaus. We certainly appreciate you taking time out of your week to give the show a watch, and very excited about this week's episode because in keeping in line with today's topic, I have with me a very special guest, one of my favorite people. And when you talk about loyalty, when you talk about, people who have your back, this guy is the epitome of that, at least for me. Joining me is my longtime close personal friend and MWO Hall of Famer, Todd Grossbauer. MWO fans know him as the infamous Marauder. And Todd, it is great to have you on the show. How are we doing, brother?
We're doing good. Great to be on here.
Oh man, I've been wanting to get with you for quite some time. Obviously with the pandemic and your schedule and my schedule, we haven't had an opportunity to really see each other in quite some time. So it's cool that with these technological advances and things like this, that we're able to actually sit down and actually see each other. So it's good to see you, man.
Same. Same.
Well, Todd, the reason why I asked you to be on the show because this week's topic has been about loyalty, and in my opinion, it's one of the key things in having a meaningful, a friendship, a relationship. Now, you and I go back a long time. We've known each other for a while. So to give a little bit of a backstory as to how you and I got hooked up, I met you through your sister Kelly, and Kelly and we went to school together, and she had mentioned that she had a brother who was a wrestling fan, and at that time we were getting plans in place to do a benefit show in Hadley. This was before the actual formal creation of the Michigan Wrestling Organization, but you and I met. We hit it off. We had a lot of things in common, and 28 years later, here we are, right? We were a lot younger, and we had a lot more hair, back then than we do. before we get to before we get to the MWO part of it, kind of take me through and take our viewers through what Todd was like as a kid. What was your childhood like, and when did wrestling become a thing on your radar?
Not really sure what kind of kid I was. Like most kids, like wrestling, like Matchbox and Hot Wheels cars, playing guns. I played out in the woods. Used to live in Ortonville for a while. Actually lived in a state park. My dad was a park ranger and was in charge of the area that we were at before our parents got divorced.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I got into wrestling. Oh, it was in the 80s. It was when before WCW was WCW, when it was Georgia Championship Wrestling, and you could tell they were wrestling in a high school gym. And they would have the folding chairs out and the tarps up to hide the backstage areas.
I didn't know that you had actually.
There, Ric Flair and Magnum TA.
Man, I'll tell you, you're going old school there, because I can, Magnum TA, man, he was a guy that was on the cusp of. I mean, he could have been one of the Mount Rushmore names had he not gotten into his accident. I mean, just before he was going to become the world heavyweight champion. So that I appreciate that, and I know some of our old school fans are going to appreciate that too, because that's not a name that you hear a lot about nowadays.
Now, this was back when Ric Flair was actually considered a good guy at the time,
Right.
even before the Four Horsemen.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're going way back. Right. That's awesome. That's awesome. It's also cool because, we're in Michigan. We are in the northern part of the country, and obviously Georgia Championship Wrestling was, more primarily towards the southern part of the country, and the WWF had such a huge stranglehold on the northern part, right? So it's kind of cool that your exposure was, the Georgia Championship Wrestling, which would become the NWA, which in turn would become WCW. So that's unique. You don't really hear that a whole lot. Now, I didn't know that you grew up, with the whole state park thing. So I mean, you said your dad was a ranger there. Is that
Yeah,
right?
he was a park ranger in Ortonville. It was
Okay.
a state park in Ortonville, and it kind of connected to Hadley because how big it is.
Right.
Literally, the campground we were at certain parts of it were technically in Lapeer County, and where the house was at was in Oakland County. Our house was right in the middle, and the campground went around it. So
Okay.
I had play play in something that people don't do, let their kids do nowadays. Go play out in the woods without being watched.
It's a different time, right? I mean, back then it was, go outside and play, and you come home when the street lights came on. In this day and age, that's not really a thing anymore, which is really sad, in a lot of aspects. But so as a kid, you have this unique environment. Were you into the hunting and the fishing and that type of thing, or no?
Not really. I hunted a little bit, but not enough to get anything. I mostly fished for fun out at
Hmm.
my grandpa's. Didn't really go out to like the major lakes or anything like that.
Okay. So you grew up with your mom and dad, and you have a younger sister, Trisha.
Yes,
Were you guys close? As you're growing up.
a little bit when we were younger, but then it kind of separated a little bit. When you get into that, I want to say later elementary, junior high. You know, kind of the get away from me type stuff until later in high school years to where I was the protective brother or
Sure.
overprotective brother.
Right. How? What's the how many years is it between you two?
Well, four.
Okay.
In '69, she was born in '74.
Okay. All right. So in high school, is that you wrestled in high school, right?
Yeah, I wrestled for 3 years. My sophomore, junior, and senior year.
Now, did that become a thing because of your appreciation for pro wrestling, or did you just kind of fall into it? Kind of talk me through what made you want to become a wrestler?
It was you mean pro wrestler or the
No, no,
school
no.
stuff?
In high school.
Uh, I had some friends that were into it in freshman year, and I was going to get into it, and then I had the unlucky event of having chicken pox at 16 around the time that there was the tryouts for wrestling. I had them for 2 weeks, so I missed the window of getting into it on my freshman year.
Oh,
And
okay.
I wasn't bad, but I wasn't good. I was mostly GV.
Uh-huh.
That's the way we did it. We had like two guys in the same weight area, and you'd wrestle each other to get the JV or varsity spot for the
Okay.
matches. Some of the
Now,
guys in my
had amateur wrestling been on your radar for a while? I mean, did you use that for the purpose of getting involved in pro wrestling, or was the pro wrestling part so far off your radar it didn't matter one way or the other?
pro wrestling was always in my head because just like everybody else, I used to go. We'd go out and do it in our yard, or we'd go do it on the pool walking mats at the Pier West.
Mm-hmm.
It was closed, and we weren't supposed to be there. Out on the football field.
Isn't that ironic? And we'll get to that part here in a little bit. You said the pole vaulting mats, and it took me back to the Hadley Town Hall, and we'll get there here in a second. So
But
by the time,
I got talked into it because of some buddies that were into it. And they were like, "You should try it."
mhm,
Yeah, this high school wrestling because I didn't want to do football, didn't want to do basketball. So
baseball wasn't a thing. It was
baseball, I wasn't coordinated enough for that.
okay. Oh, that's fantastic. Um, so Todd, by the time you and I met, um, kind of looking back and kind of knowing a little bit of your backstory back then, um, your dad had already passed away. Is that right? I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Tell me what kind of an influence he was on you, because that was one of the first things that really stuck out to me when you and I met. I You had talked about it a little bit, back then, but you didn't really go into great detail. And I know now, I didn't know then, but now I can understand, what the significant impact of losing a parent, can do. Thankfully at this point, my dad is still here, but I lost my mom a few years ago. Um, Kind of talk me through, if you can, what kind of a relationship did you have with your dad, and subsequently the impact that his passing had on you.
Well, the relationship was, we'd see him like every other weekend, go to his house like once a week to have family night, as we'd call it.
Mhm.
Pizza, burgers at a place, or stay at the house for a weekend. There was times where he'd show up at one time I was high school. I want to say it was my freshman year. I used to ride my bike to school, and one day I went to go get my bike, and for some reason my dad was there with his motorcycle, and decided, hey, let's go for a road trip. And I rode out to Fostoria, hang out at a bar out there that sort of freaked me out because at the time my age and biker gang that was known to be out there.
Right.
We did stuff like that, or he'd pick me up to go have manly talks, buy a beer, and drive the back roads. Stuff we're not supposed to do now. Well,
Right.
wasn't supposed to do, but you know. Um, I mean, it was off and on again sometimes because he didn't like some of the stuff I did as a friend I hung out with and stuff like that. I'd disappoint him sometimes, or he'd get mad at my mom for something, and wouldn't see him for a little while because just backlash from that type of stuff.
Right.
But yeah, he was an influence because it was always if I do this or if I get in trouble for this, what's he gonna think?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, anybody who knows you knows, that he had a significant influence on you. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I remember the first time you let me read something that you had written called Fire Lord, which was a tribute to him, correct?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
when that was written, was that after he had passed?
Actually, that was written just before he passed. I
Okay.
was writing something up for him, just because he had been sick for a while, and I was just, try to cheer him up, show him what I thought, that type, because that was his nickname from our bonfires and him almost setting his porch on fire once for grilling. So,
Oh man, that it really was, and I think I may have mentioned it back then, but that was one of the most powerful things that I had ever read. And it just me, man, I have a great appreciation for creative writing, poetry, that type of thing. I've read thousands of different things like that, but yours, I mean, to this day, it stands out to me because you can really feel the emotion, and you can really feel the love that went into that writing. And to me, in my opinion, that's when you really, that's when you have a good piece of writing, is when you can feel the emotion as you're reading it. So, I mean, did you ever have a chance to show that to him
that
before?
going. That one I did get to read to him
Okay.
because when they were living out in Elba that I wrote it and read it to him when he was home.
What was his response?
Um, he cried a
Sure.
little bit, you know, which wasn't my intention, but that's kind of what happens.
Well, right, because we all, I mean, not all, but knowing what I knew about your dad, he had this, the way he was described to me, because I didn't have the opportunity to meet him, but the way you guys talk about him, it was, he had a persona, like this larger than life persona, and kind of like your legit badass, right? So,
Mm.
to be reduced to tears like that, to me, as I just heard that, that is a testament to you and all this emotion that you had put into that writing. And I'll tell you, man, I just said it. I mean, it stands out to this day, and I think that was a very cool thing that you did, and that's something. If you haven't done so already, I would suggest having that thing printed out and framed, and make copies of it for Will, and and things of this nature, because it is that impactful. It really is. But let's fast forward a little bit. Um, as I mentioned, I met you through Kelly, and I remember sitting down with you. I think it was at the house in Elba, if I'm not mistaken. And we decided, or I was trying to get this benefit show up and rolling for my speech teacher, and you were 100% on board right from the get go. What can I do to help? And that's, we had just met not all that long, before that. So I was like, wow, this guy is, he doesn't hardly know me, and the fact that he's willing to just jump in with both feet is a real testament. And we did that show, and it was bare minimum, right? I mean, we didn't have a ring. We actually had to go to Lapeer West to get mats from
Yep.
the gym, because my gym teacher at the time, Mr. Williams was his name, and he knew what I was trying to do, and I explained the whole situation with him, with the ring through and stuff like that. He's actually the one that kind of cleared the path for us to go in there that day and take a couple of the mats out of there to haul ass to the Hadley Town Hall, and we threw them on the floor, and we put chairs, or no, it was those boxes that you jump up on. That's what we used as the corner. Now we had a limited roster, right? So a bunch of us did double and triple duty under different masks and outfits and things of this nature. And the one thing that I took away from that show was it was a tournament thing, and you and I were in the very first match. And as soon as the bell rung, I come out and I hit you with a drop kick, and
Yep.
I busted your nose right from the get
You
go.
saw the blood coming through the mask. It was for
You were the
and you're
Ninja Emperor back then, or something like that. But it was a black mask. But I remember getting down to go for the cover, and you could see the blood start to come through the mask. I'm like, oh my god, right out of the gate, first thing I hurt this guy, and it was. You could have told me to piss off right then and there, and I wouldn't have blamed you. But do you, on that first show, that very first one before the creation of the MWO, was there anything that stuck out to you? That what was it that made you think that you wanted to continue to be a part of this thing? Because anybody else probably would have turned and ran the other way, right? Because nobody had their nose busted right out of the gate.
it was an accident, Plus, I liked your passion for it, and it was something I wanted to be involved in. Helping people out because that's what we were doing at the time before that show.
Yeah, it was definitely a very emotional show. So let's, from that is when we sat down, me and you and Jason Cloyd, and we sat down and said, what if? What if we started our own promotion? And I remember vividly, sitting down for a series of meetings. This is what we're going to do. This is the shows that we're going to tackle. This is what we're going to call the company. These are going to be our championships. Did you imagine back then that 26 years later, this thing would still, still be rolling?
Didn't think it, but I hoped it.
Yeah, yeah. Different
And we've
time back then, though, right?
gone through many different forms, I guess you could say, and roster and all that, but it stayed the. I guess you could say the principle of it stayed the same. What we wanted done, or to do, I should say.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the foundation of the company has never wavered. I did all despite the changes in the roster, venue, equipment. Thank God, because we stayed
Yeah.
bare minimum, right? It was going around looking for pallets and things like that to build a makeshift ring.
Yep. I remember those pallets and plywood, or tables on top of the pallets.
You're right. Yeah, the first few ones we were using the tables at the town hall.
And then chairs because the
Yeah.
ropes weren't to jump off of.
No, they were just there for show, just to
Yeah.
give you the. I mean, we couldn't bounce off them or anything. I remember, Todd, and I don't know if you do. I remember going in the night before and setting up for WrestleRama 1. Back in April of '95, and um, your you and I were going to be in the main event because that was the story that we started the whole company out from. It was you were insistent on being the bad guy. I was the quintessential baby face. So it was a natural fit. Our rivalry is kind of what set the table for what would become the MWO. Um, to me, I I have maintained this for a long time that the MWO wouldn't have started the way that it had if there wasn't the Marauder character, right? Because you were the ultimate heel, and you played that part to a T. Because you're not necessarily a bad guy, you know, but you played one so well. What? Because I believe that a good character is an extension, or you tap into something on the inside that is very real. So what was your inspiration for this butthole character, this heel character that you portrayed in the show?
Well, I used some of my dad, knowing how he was. I also modeled it off of Benoit a
Okay.
little, and basically gangbanger motorcycle guy. Not something you see in Lapeer much.
Right. Right.
And
I mean, but you had the whole package, man. You had the long hair, you had the jean jacket, you had it airbrushed with your name. In fact, I have it in my office to this day. You gave that to me, a few years ago. And listen, out of everything that I have and everything that I have accumulated over the years in terms of memorabilia and things of that nature, when you gave me that jean jacket with the Guns N' Roses logo and Marauder, spray painted across the top, that is one of my most personal favorite things that I have in my collection, because I knew what that meant to you. So you are responsible for the creation of the first faction in the MWO, Bad Blood.
yes.
And man, you want to talk about pouring the gasoline on the fire, because you were hot as a heel. Our fans did not like you at all. So when you formed this army to essentially take me out of the company, I it went through various incarnations, various
Oh,
members. My brother was part of it for a little while. Jason Harrison was part of it for a brief time, but before that, before he became part of it, you and him, he portrayed the character of the Dragon Slayer, Shiro Nagami.
yes.
You guys had a big rivalry for the Great Lakes Championship.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, what do you remember about that feud? Because aside from the rivalry that you and I had, you and him had, your rivalry was right up there. I mean, it won feud of the year in '96 and things like this. So I mean, you guys had a chemistry together. Which you don't find really, back then all that often. So what was it about him where you guys just clicked?
I guess it was the way he did his character and how he did his moves and well, his screech. I don't know if that's what you want to call it.
Yeah,
You know,
he was a character, man, and I mean, he embraced. He's obviously in real life not Oriental. He's not an Asian guy. He's very much an American like you and I. But he embraced that character, and the shrieks is
uh-huh.
every time he'd hit you, anytime he'd do anything, he let out this very distinctive sound, right? Because oh god,
But it was kind of like the karate movie Hayas and stuff like that.
very
And it
stereotypical.
was fun to wrestle with him.
Yeah, yeah, because he would let you do just about anything,
Mm-hmm.
without fear or without any hesitation whatsoever. And when I think about your career, obviously the thing with me and you, and which kind of set the table, like I said earlier. But you and Harrison, that's right up there. And I firmly believe that was a big part of the early success that we had. I mean, you worked together at WrestleRama 2, and you kind of traded the Great Lakes Championship back and forth there for a minute until you got hold of it, and you were for, I mean, a long time the longest reigning Great Lakes champion in our company's history. And you kind of, when you talk about the Great Lakes title, you are on that Mount Rushmore of the best champions to have ever had that title. So what, I mean, were you aware of the impact that you had made on the company up to this point?
Not really. I was just having fun and enjoying what we were doing.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's what it's all about, right? Is having fun, And during those first few years, I mean, we put everything we had into the company.
Mm.
It was a lot of phone calls. What can we do here? How can we improve this? I specifically remember going to, I believe it was Cortland Mall, and we had jackets airbrushed or made. They were those black jackets with the purple writing.
Yep.
You remember
Green
those?
stuff. Yep. Yep. I still have mine.
I believe I have mine here somewhere. It don't fit no more, but I mean, I think it's around here somewhere. Um, we could sit here for hours and go year by year, in our careers with the MWO. But um, the one thing that I just kind of want to touch on the highlights. Obviously, with the beginning of the company and then the feud with Nagami, we moved from Hadley to running shows at the Lapeer County Center building, which was a cool thing. We did multiple WrestleRamas there, including, and you were a pivotal part of the Blue Bombers scandal at WrestleRama 5, where my brother was under the Blue Bomber hood, and he had won the title. And then he goes out and meets you in the aisleway and unveils himself to be him, and he's aligned himself with the devil himself, and all this other stuff. Did you know then that moment would be one of those folklore stories that is still told to this day?
Not really. I just thought it was a fun thing, and then kind of. I don't want to say rib, but this would get Jason, and this would get the crowd. If we make Jeff the Blue Bomber and have him become bad blood, because of the feud.
Right. Oh, it worked.
With you two, for me to come.
Do you want to talk about going into business for yourself? That was certainly what happened on that night. But I mean, in hindsight, there's not a more perfect way that could have went down, because it just added another layer to our story, our chapter. And it was, like I said, it's still a story I tell to this day, and it's become legendary. Just as legendary is Tricker Slam 2000. Now, when I say Tricker Slam 2000, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Zilwaukee.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're gonna bring up Zilwaukee.
Of course I am. That's a tax to you for the rest of your life. I'm here to tell you. As long as there is an MWO, there's going to be a Zilwaukee story.
Yeah, I'm told it was the reason we didn't have mature shows anymore. When you have the head of the company telling you this is a mature rated show, you can say what you want, and I asked twice. Like, are you sure? I can say what I want. Oh yeah, it's mature audience. Say what you want. I'm like, okay.
So to give the viewers a backstory, we were at the Adams Street Banquet Hall in Zilwaukee. I don't know if it's even called that, to this day. I don't even know if it's still there. I mean, I assume it is, but I've driven over the bridge plenty of times, but I have never, since then, I don't think I've been to the actual town of Zilwaukee since then. But we were doing the Tricker Slam show, and you and I were not even booked against each other on that show. I had my own match with Psychotron, and you were in the main event in a triangle match with King Cobra and Skulls for the MWO Championship, which you would go on to win. But we had you have a promo segment. Now there was like a little stage part in the one side of the hall, and there was the storage cabinets right there, and that's where I was hiding in, because you were going to cut this promo, then I was going to bust out of there, and then you and I were going to brawl. And I remember I was sitting down in this dark, in the storage cabinet, and I can hear you. And the first thing out of your mouth is there any Basher fans here? And we had kind of a small crowd at that show, so there was kind of hemming and hawing. That's all right. Basher don't need no fucking fans. And then you just went off on this tangent. And I remember thinking, as I'm listening to you, God, is he really mad at me about something? Because I mean, you just let it roll, man. I know a lot of that was based on your character, and I gave you free reign, and I realized that. But I didn't realize that you were going to utilize it to the extent that you did. That was fantastic.
That was my favorite word.
Oh, it was great. Good.
Remember, like the beginning of it, and then Basher don't need no fucking fans, and I'm wondering, okay, how's Jason taking this?
Right. Oh, yeah. I mean, it was amusing. I mean, I chuckled. I mean, but like I said, I wondered in the back of my mind at that point, God damn, is he mad at me about something? And he's using this to kind of voice his frustration. But and I wouldn't blame you if he did, because like I said, I gave you free reign to do and say whatever you wanted. But man, Todd, it just it's things like that really solidified you, not just the character, but you as a pillar of this organization. And I know I've mentioned this before, in years that have passed, just how important you were and are to the lineage of the organization as a whole, not just the Great Lakes title and not the Bad Blood thing, and the fact that you and I headlined WrestleRama 1 and all this. But through thick and thin, man, you have always been a loud supporter of the company and for me. And you'll never know how much that has meant to me, because as well as anybody, over the years we've gotten a lot of flack from a lot of different people, and you've always been one to stand up and say, fuck you. You don't know what you're talking about. And, this is my 2 cents. And you have always been a champion for the cause. And I really appreciate that, man, because as well as anybody, finding real loyal friends in this day and age, even back then, was a hard thing, because you always questioned what their true motives were. With you, I never had to worry about that.
Nope. I was there to help, and you were friends. I believed in what we were doing. I believed in you. Believed in the company, how we were running it.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I maintain that, had it not been for you and Cloyd too, because he was a major part of it in the first, the first few years there, before he started doing his own thing, and it prevented him from being a part of the shows. But you maintained for a long time before, your personal life took these twists and turns. You had got married, you had Will, and we've seen Will grow up before our very eyes, and it blows my mind at this point that he's a dad now. I
Mm-hmm.
remember the day he was born. You know what I mean? And now here we are, and he's got a brand new baby, and you're a grandpa, and it's crazy to think back how much time has gone by like that, right?
Boy, it seems like it. Yeah, snap of a finger.
Right. I mean, I've got pictures. I full disclosure, I went through your Facebook page the other night, and I took a couple of pictures out of there to incorporate with the show here today. But there was one on there, man, that got me right here, and it was a picture of you and Will in the ring. I believe it was in Clio. Before a show, you were in the corner, and he was kind of standing there, and it's like, man, I remember that kid. I actually ran into him. I don't know if it was last Christmas or the Christmas before. Um, my brother and I were doing some shopping in Lapeer. I think we were at Walmart in Lapeer, and I seen him, and I walked up to him, and he reckoned, he remembered me, and because I hadn't seen him in so long, but I knew who he was. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
Will, and he's like, hey, what's going on? And he walked away, and I was like, he's a man, and Jeff asked me, who is that? He's like, I know who that, but who is that? I'm like, that's Will Grossbauer. That's Todd's kid. He's like, little Will Grossbauer. You know what I mean? So, Jeff hadn't seen him in forever, and it's crazy, man. It's crazy. These roads, and how time just flies by, but it makes me appreciate things like this more, and I wish that we were able to see each other more in person than we do. But ultimately, I just wanted to get with you on here, and just to say thank you for everything, because I don't think you realize how much I appreciate you and everything that you have done for us, for me, on a personal and a professional level. But things are good for you now, are they not?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah, you're
Maybe in the Clio area. Still working security. But, one of the stupid advisors, as I call it.
right, right.
It's me to not be able to wrestle, plus a few health issues here and there. But
I mean, anything that we need to be worried about?
oh no, it's just the pressure and that type of stuff.
Right.
Nothing
Yeah.
to.
Whoever said this whole getting old thing was a cakewalk is a liar. It sucks. But real quick, man. I've been following. Obviously, we're friends and everything, but been keeping close tabs on your different posts and things that you've been putting on Facebook in relation to your mom. And I know your mom has been going through a tremendous challenge here, lately. And I just kind of want to, how is she doing? Is she doing okay?
Well, last time I can't say spoke with her because last time I texted her, she was getting the cards that I requested, and then asking us to bring her treats because where she's at, they're not allowing visitation yet.
Because of
She
COVID, right?
She's yeah, they actually had it was okayed for inside visits starting, but you had to like make appointments and stuff like that and do all their stuff. But I guess they had a couple of employees test positive, so they don't want to do the visitation yet. But yeah, she's been in Grand Blanc over there for 4 years, going on 4 years.
Has it been that long?
Yes, it's been that long, and she's back. She's was on the ventilator. She's off it now. She had a couple of issues during this COVID stuff where she had to go to the hospital, and they actually had to shock her, do CPR and that. She had a couple of heart attack episodes, and then had to be back on a ventilator and stuff. Right now, she's as she put it, she has to learn how to walk again because she hasn't been doing anything like that for a while. She's wheelchair bound and that, but other than that, she's a little depressed because of not seeing family and not being able to see the grandkids yet,
Right.
in particular. But she's doing better.
Well, I'm certainly glad to hear that, and she's certainly, in my thoughts, in my prayers and things like that. Like I said, I've been keeping tabs on your posts and your updates and things of that nature. Your mom has always been real sweet with me. She's always been very warm and welcoming. And, I remember, I didn't realize, at this point that it had been 4 years, but I remember when everything started happening and, things were going not in a great way, right. At that point. So it's good to hear that she's trying to to kick out of this thing. So we are certainly pulling for sure. And you had mentioned the card thing. For those who are not aware, you had put out a post that if people were so inclined, you had put in an address to send her cards of encouragement and things of that nature. What I'm going to do at the end of this show, I'm going to put up a graphic, if you don't mind, with her address. So any of my viewers who are so inclined and they want to help boost her spirits a little bit, we're going to put that on the show here at the end, so they have that opportunity to do so. And certainly, I encourage anybody. If you want to make a difference in somebody's day, which is what this whole thing is all about, it takes a couple of minutes to, fill out a card and drop it in the mailbox. I know it would mean the world to your mom. So we're gonna do that here at the end of the show. Todd, I mean, as we wrap this up, man, is there anything else you want to touch on? Anything else you want to talk about?
Not, not offhand, just thank you for the experience and for the many years of getting in that ring. I miss it.
Yeah.
Believe me, I miss it. But also being 52 years old kind of tells me that I'm getting a little too old for it.
Age is nothing but a number, brother. You know that as well as anybody.
True.
But as we put a bow on this, a lot, and I know I've touched on it. Just let me say, number one, I love you, and I think the world of you, and I will always be so appreciative for everything that you've done with me, for me, in the ring, out of the ring, in the crazy world of professional wrestling. If it hadn't been for wrestling, there probably, I don't know if you and I would have had the bond that we've shared for the last 2+ decades. And the one thing that I was very happy that we were able to do was back in 1995 at Charter Oaks. You and I took promo shots, right?
Yep.
And there was one where, because I think we were doing it for the promotional stuff for WrestleRama 1, and there was a picture of you and I back to back. We recreated that picture last year at WrestleRama 25 in Fenton, outside of the community center, and I actually printed that, and I have it hanging up here in my office, and it is one of my favorite things. And because there was, it's kind of like a before and after type of gimmick, and this is what we looked like in 1995, and this is what we look like now. And that was it just to me, those two pictures really sum up our friendship, and it means the absolute world. So I appreciate the hell out of you. I just want you to know that.
You got me to do something I always wanted to do, from watching TV, getting in that ring and having fun. Lots of fun.
Yeah, it's been a journey, right? There's no doubt about that.
Downs with the company, stuff like that, but to me, it was still all fun.
Right.
Like I had always told the guys, when they were going in the ring, do a good job, get the fans to have, into it, but have fun. That's what it's all about. Have fun.
Absolutely. Could not have said it better. Well, brother, I certainly appreciate you, and I appreciate you taking time out to be on the show this week. And for those of you watching, we certainly appreciate you tuning in. And if you're digging what we're doing here, we encourage you to hit the subscribe button on the YouTube channel, and you can check out the Close to the Heart podcast. Every Tuesday, a new episode drops at midnight. And don't forget to check out our new website, closetotheheart.net. And there you will see merchandise links. There is email, closetotheheart@gmail.com with any kinds of questions, comments, or feedback. Todd Grossbauer, the Marauder, Hall of Famer, bad guy, good guy, whatever you know him is. Thank you for coming on the show. And for the rest of you, we will see you next time right here on the Close to the Heart Show on YouTube.com.